Okay, so welcome to tonight's REAP call, Golden Rule Investing. That's what this is all about. And REAP is Real Estate Asset Planning. And what we've been doing on Monday nights is we've been focusing on funding. And the last couple of Monday nights, we've been focusing on the 1031 tax deferred exchange, or at least last week we began. And we made a pretty good jump through it, I think, kind of understanding what the 1031 is all about. How any property owner on any kind of real estate that's used as an income property, this can be a warehouse, it can be a single family home, it can be a 32-unit apartment building, it can be 500-unit apartment building, it could be a ranch, as long as it produces income, cattle or something, has a crop on it or something. Any kind of income producing property can be exchanged for any other kind of income producing property. And it can be done so in a way that creates a complete tax deferral for the one who's trying to grow. Now, the one who wants to get out of the asset, like if you had $1 million worth of real estate right now and you wanted to sell it, you could sell it all today and you could pay taxes on that in one big chunk. Or what you could do is you could divide it up into little chunks and sell little chunks. But let's say that you have a business or some kind of a property that it's not easily chunkable. In other words, you just can't sell off 10 acres. Maybe there's a zoning limitation or something. You've got to sell the whole thing. And if you sell the whole thing, you create a tax liability for yourself. So the way you get out of that is you take your one big $1 million equity property that's not chunkable, and you do an exchange into, let's say, 10 $100,000 properties. And having completed your 1031 tax deferred exchange, you now have 10 $100,000 properties. You can sell them off one at a time as you'd like to sell them and start divesting, and then only pay taxes on the units you actually sell rather than on your entire $1 million estate. So the 1031 tax deferred exchange is a great strategy for moving up, from going from a $100,000 property into $1 million property. And it's a great strategy for going down, for going from $1 million property down into a bunch of $100,000 properties, so that you can do something with each of those properties on their own separate timetable. Does everybody understand that? Do you understand that you can either grow up or grow down with it? Guys got that?
Yes.
Good.
That part, yep.
Good. That part you got. Now, we brought up some other aspect last time, and that is that when one does a 1031 tax deferred exchange, usually there's like property A, and the owner of property A wants to exchange for property B. But many, many times the owner of property B does not want property A. And so what we set up is a three-legged exchange where owner A gets possession of property B because owner A wants property B. But owner B does not want property A. So a cash buyer comes in and buys property A, giving seller B the cash. Got it? So B gives A their property, A gives B their property. B doesn't want property A, so A sells it for cash or for some kind of terms. And therefore, we have what's called a three-legged exchange. We have a cash buyer, the guy who ends up with the property over here. And we have this guy who just wanted out altogether. So everybody gets what they want. And it's called a three-legged exchange. Any questions on that part?
No.
Nope.
Good. I love you chiming in, Carrie, because that was good. Jeff, I wish you'd chime in too. And Julie, when you want to, just chime in, let me know. Now, look, tonight we're going to bring up another possibility. I guess it's a fourth icon over here. See that little plus sign? So tonight we're going to bring up the possibility of doing this two-legged or three-legged 1031. But we're actually going to bring in a fourth element here. That is, I want to move up to a bigger property, but I need some cash. And so how do I get cash without selling my property? Well, the easy answer to this is that if I want to get cash without selling my property, I simply go refinance my property, right? I go get a loan on my property. Now I don't have to do a 1031. I don't have to sell. I have my property and I get a loan on my property. And now my loan is not taxable. My loan is tax deferred because why? Because I'm getting a loan. Loans are not taxable income. However, the loan is based on principal payments, or I'm sorry, the loan has principal payments. So as I pay down on the principal of the loan, it's kind of like I'm giving myself possession of that amount of equity. And so if I have a property and I refinance it and I put cash in my pocket, I'm not liable to pay any tax at all until I start paying down on principal. This is the reason why a lot of people like interest-only loans, because they don't have to worry about the accounting. They just service the interest. The interest is tax deductible, and they don't have any equity buildup, any principal buildup. Now, I've introduced a couple nuances there. And so the idea is, now the question is, how do I do a 1031 and do a loan in such a way that I can buy a property and put cash in my pocket without selling and without paying any taxes? So that's the goal for tonight. The goal is to buy a property, grow, earn $150,000 in equity, and put $27,000 cash in your pocket without selling any property. And I'm gonna do this tonight from a place of a buyer investor who has no cash to start with. A buyer investor who's completely broke and wants to grow $177,000. Got it? How do I start with nothing and grow $177,000? That's going to be the challenge tonight, and that's what we're going to explain. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, good. Now, when we
Sounds
grow this
almost
100,
impossible, but I'm sure you're going to tell us how.
it sounds impossible. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that, Jeff. You hit the nail on the head. It does sound impossible, doesn't it?
And in the world of financing, practically nothing is impossible. It's all on how you move the numbers around.
Well, in this case, it's how you move the title around.
Correct.
So I'm gonna show you how to do that. It does sound impossible, and I think that's one reason why people don't understand the power and the beauty of real estate. And what's cool about this is I'm not just going to talk about theory. I'm going to talk about something that I actually did. I started with not a penny in my pocket and ended up about 60 days later with $150,000 in equity and $27,500 in my pocket. And when I got audited by the IRS, they stood all amazed. I had to explain it to the guy 3 times, but I survived the audit. So this is one of those cases where not only does it sound impossible, but it actually survives the audit. So that's really good. So I can teach this one with confidence. I want to remind you guys that everything I teach, either my clients have done or I have done. And in this particular case, I've done it.
I have just a little thing is I have.
Okay, I'm having trouble hearing you, Julie. So say that again.
I don't know why. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very faintly though, for some reason. It could be on my end. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to get closer.
Oh, that works.
Okay, I have a condo. I'm interested in what you're doing because I have a condo and I owe almost nothing,
Yeah.
mortgage.
Yeah.
And mortgage amount has gone so down since last year during the virus.
Right.
thing. Yes.
Perfect.
And so I thought, oh, that's a good idea. I'd like to put a new, I'm sorry, I can't talk very well.
You can either put a new mortgage on your property and get some cash.
Yes, yes.
Are you renting that property right now?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so the trick would be, and by the way, just as a little code, this light blue box right here represents a loan. That actually represents a loan. So this dark blue is equity. And this hinted there was a loan involved in it, but I never disclosed that. Nobody ever asked me what that box was. I never told anybody. So yeah, simply, Julie, you could take your current rental property and you could go refinance it. You could get a loan on it. The fact that it has a renter on it right now, and that you could go to the lender and say, look, I'm collecting a certain amount of money every month. I want to borrow money, and the lender will look very favorably at your loan, especially when the mortgage payment is less than the rent you're collecting. So it's kind of like free money, right? So how much are you collecting on rent?
It's 1,900.
So you should be able to go to your, and what's your current mortgage payment on your property?
I'm sorry.
How much are you currently paying on the mortgage?
Currently, oh, about 1,000.
1,000. So you've got some money in there. You've got a positive cash flow between what you're collecting and what you're paying out. You could go get a chunk of money and they would just give you an amount of loan equal to the difference between your income and they would give you a loan up to your income. Now, I want to talk to you about it privately because there might be a way for you to do this, maybe better than another way. One way to do it is just like a bull in a china closet, and you go out and find a lender to refinance the loan. You pay off the existing loan. But I would want to look at that existing loan and see if it has any value for you. Sometimes an existing loan creates value, but yes, you could go refinance and put some money in your pocket. So instead of collecting $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month, you could have $15, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in your pocket in one chunk.
I've tried a couple of times online to each of those, and I could do like 500 to 600 a month instead of the mortgage itself is 1,200. About that, because the extra 500 that makes it because it's 1,200, but it's about 600 every month for the condo itself, cleaning, everything they do there. That's
right.
And I forgot about that. That's separate. It's the total amount is about 1,070.
Okay.
Anyways, so it would be like half less.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we move ahead, I would want to have you fill out an APOD, a property operating data sheet, and we'll take a look at your property. And then I'd want you to interview mortgage lenders and see what they'll do. But the APOD, the annual property operating data sheet, which will help you total your expenses, how much you're paying for the association fee, and it'll give you a really good idea of exactly what you have to work with. And in creative financing, that's called shooting the income stream. In other words, I have an income stream of whatever it is, $100 a month, $500 a month, $1,000 a month. That income is coming in, but I don't want the income stream. I want a chunk of money now. There's something I can do, maybe go on a vacation, maybe, or maybe I could buy another property. So that's called shooting the income stream. So we can talk about it. And we're going to describe something like that in this transaction today. Okay?
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, and I don't know why I'm having such a wonderful time hearing issues, but we'll see how that happens. All right. So let me explain how this works. And I've got a little chart here to kind of explain it. And so let's take a look. I'm going to get in close to this thing. And here we go. So you can be the buyer investor. And let me give you the key to making this money. There's nothing illegal about it at all. The key to making this money is understanding the concept of change of use. How I buy one property and I can exchange it. I can increase that value by changing the use of a property. Very simply, this let me breathe. You buy a single family home that's worth $125,000, let's say, but then you get it zoned properly and you have it in a commercial area where now it's worth double that. Got it? So simply by changing the use of the property, I increase the value. And that's really the essence. You're going to see a lot of like things going on down here when I talk about it. But just imagine that you purchase a property that's worth say $25,000. You change the use on the property. You convert it from a single family home rental to an office building rental, and thereby double the value based on the fact that you can double the rent, because people will pay more for an office building than they will for a house. Now, of course, you can't do that with every house, can you? You have to find houses that are zoned in commercial zones, and then you have to find somebody who's willing to rent that house as an office building and double your rent. You got it? You have a house worth $125,000. You change the zone, you go to the city, you get it approved. It's now worth double that. And now you rent the property out instead of to a single family home renter. You rent the property out to a business and they double the rent. Do you all understand change of use? Anybody have any question on change of use? Okay.
No,
What's that?
I said no.
All right, good. That's what we're going to do here. Now, I was looking for an office building. I found a house in a commercial neighborhood. It's very important that when you're looking for property that you look at the zones. Look at the land use zone underneath that property. The property could be a single family home today, or a duplex, or a fourplex, or 5 units, or 8 units, but you look at the zone and see if it's approved for something of more value. If you have an 8plex and it's in the middle of a 22 unit zone, you may be able to tear down that 8plex and build 22 units and double your income. And that's likewise across the board. So I found a house that was in a commercial neighborhood, and I thought, wow, that would make a perfect office building, right? So I went to the seller and I said to the seller, hey, I'd like to buy your house. They said, man, I'd love to sell this house. I said, well, great. Why do you want to sell? You always want to ask a seller why they're selling. There are like 5 or 6 basic questions. Why are you selling? What do you want? And what do you need? And when do you need it by? I mean, it really comes down to, that's what the key negotiation is all about. The seller told me that they loved the house, but they hated the house because of the noise. They loved the neighborhood the way it used to be. They loved the floor plan on the house the way it was, but they hated the noise because there were all these cars driving by and it just wasn't the same old neighborhood that it used to be. This home had somebody across the way had built a big mall, and suddenly there was a bunch of activity there, and this property was no longer in a good residential area. So I thought the house was worth about $110,000. But it was in this commercial location, so I thought the house ought to be worth probably $120,000, $150,000 as a commercial building. Little did I know, and I'll tell you the exact story how it happened. The seller said that even though the house was that I thought the house, and I showed the seller the house was only worth $110,000. The seller thought the house was worth at least $125,000, maybe even $150,000 because of the commercial location. The seller was not asleep. And I said, well, I'll be glad to buy your property from you, and I'll even pay you $125,000, but I'll give you money down and pay you money per month. They said, no, I want all cash, because I want to go buy a house that I can live in. And I said to them, well, okay, let's write up the offer, and I will pay you all cash at $125,000, or I will find you a property that you want to move into that's equal or greater in livability than your own home. I'll find you a new property. And the guy agreed. We signed up the offer for $125,000 or a new property. And then I wrote that offer to purchase subject to my CPA's approval, because I told the guy that I wanted to convert it to an office building and that it had to be converted. He knew it was worth something. He said, okay, I'll do that. Now, I also went to a lender in advance because I did not want to take any chances. Before I signed up my offer, I called up my lender and I said, if I change this to an office building, is it going to be more than worth? Is it going to be worth more than 125,000? And the lender said to me, well, it's probably going to be worth more than 125,000, but we've got to get an appraisal on it first. So get the offer, get the property accepted under contract, and we'll do an appraisal on it. Now, but so I went out because my job was to find my property owner a new property, right? And I didn't want to put any money into this transaction. So I went out and I found property number 2. So here's property number 2. This is interesting. I wonder if I'm going to be able to. Okay, good. Here's property B. How did I have that labeled up there? Oh, I didn't. I was looking for an office building. I found a house. So this guy right here is really property owner A right here. So this is property B. And I went to this guy and it was in the same neighborhood. It was a really good house. And I thought, you know, this house is bigger than my guy. It's bigger than property A up here. And I'm going to go ahead and label this property A because I need to do that. And it was bigger than property A, and I thought it would be everything that this guy, owner A would want. So I went to this guy, and he was selling his house for, he had been trying to sell his house for around $120,000, and he couldn't sell it. So he dropped his price. And I went to him and made an offer, and I said, look, I will, and I noticed I changed the numbers here to make the story work, but I said, I'll pay you $10,000 down, and then I'll pay you the balance of $100,000 over the next 20 years. And my buyer said, yeah, they do that. Now, why would a buyer do that? A buyer would do that because he was looking to retire. He was leaving the area and he wanted a monthly income. He already had a property picked out in California that he was moving to, and he just wanted monthly income. And I told him, okay, I'll be glad to buy your house. And oh, I see what I'm doing. This is where I'm talking about. I offered my owner of property A. I offered my owner A. Oh, gee, I'm so sorry. I got this screwed up. I offered my owner A $10,000 and I would pay him the $100,000. He said no. He wanted all cash because he wanted to buy a house with no mortgage on it. He had his property now was free and clear, and he wanted to make sure he moved into a house for free and clear. And this is where I decided right here that I'll either pay you cash for the $120,000, or I'll get you a home free and clear. And that I jumped ahead of myself up here. So I'm just moving from up here down to here. I apologize. Hope that's good for you guys. Now, I told him I couldn't close right away. And he said, well, I want to be able to keep this property on the market then, because if a new buyer comes along and you haven't done your thing, I don't want to miss a new buyer. I said, okay. So I got a first right of refusal. Do you guys know what a first right of refusal is? That means the seller accepted my offer. However, if the seller could go ahead and keep the property on the market, and if the seller got an offer from another buyer, I would have 24 hours to meet the terms of that offer, or else I would have to move. I would just have to give up on the property and let the new buyer buy the property. So, and I agreed to do that because I didn't want to torture anybody. And that was the only way the seller would do that anyway. So I was real happy with it. Okay. So I signed up this purchase agreement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about documentation in just a minute. Then I went out and I found property B. This was owner number 2. This is where I found the house. It was in the same neighborhood. It was around the corner, so there was no traffic. So I'd hoped that the seller of property A was going to love this property. Not only that, it was a bigger property, had a big family room on it, had a big fireplace on it. And the guy in the first property had a fireplace, so I knew he'd want a fireplace. There was no traffic. This guy's property had been on the market for 9 months and he couldn't sell it. The house had been listed it was reduced. It had been listed. This is where I was giving my first numbers. It was listed for 110,000, but he couldn't move it. So he reduced the price to $90,000. He was moving to San Diego. And I went up to the guy and said, I'll pay it. I'll buy this house with $90,000 and I'll pay you $10,000 down and I'll owe you $80,000 for 10 years, subject to my CPA's approval. And the seller said, okay, we'll do it, because he was anxious to go, anxious to leave. So I went to the owner of property A and showed them property B, and owners A loved property B. They loved the neighborhood, they loved the floor plan, and they loved the fact that the property was going to have no mortgage on it. So this is where you guys get to follow what I'm doing here. I had property A locked up, ready to go, and property owner A was willing to take property B free and clear. I had property B locked up and ready to go. And by the way, I had no cash involved with this at all. I think I put $100 in earnest money on each one of these properties. And I went to property B and got him signed up to take $10,000 down, which I didn't have, and do the $80 a month. But I was fine with that because my office, I knew I could afford to pay that mortgage for my office rent, no problem. And so everybody was happy. And then I got the property signed up and I went to my commercial lender. I went to my commercial lender to appraise property A, and they came back and said that property is worth $275,000, but only if I took out the kitchen and put in a parking lot, and I had to do a couple of other things. But as soon as I took out that kitchen and put in that parking lot, that property was going to be worth $275,000. They told me they would give me a 70% LTV loan on that property. They told me they would loan me $187,000 on the property. And I said, I don't want a $187,000 loan. They said, well, how much do you want? And I said that I just need enough money to cover a few expenses. And so I needed money to put in to take out the kitchen, to make the other changes that they wanted, and to put in that parking lot. I needed to do something with the bathroom as well. It was going to be a total of $15,000 to do the fix up on that property and make that property into an office building to make them happy. And instead of getting a first mortgage for $187,000, I told them that all I wanted was a second mortgage on the property of $45,000. You with me? So this is pretty exciting. So by the way, the seller, I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I have a calculation right here that I could explain to you, but I don't think I want to explain that to you right now because I'm not sure that it's gonna survive, and I want to make sure that you guys get the simplicity of this thing here. Okay, there we go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross that out. Okay. All right, so here we go. I went back to property owner B. Remember the house that had been on the market for 120,000 or so, and the guy finally it wasn't selling, so he dropped his price down to $90,000. I could have bought this thing at the full asking price. He didn't need to drop his price. So maybe when I teach this next time, I will take that drop in price out of there just to make it more believable in today's market. So I went back and I told property owner B, property B owner number 2, I said, my CPA has approved the transaction with some changes. Now here's what I told my guy. And what I want you to do here is I want you to think of these properties. I'm going to draw a little box right here. This is property A. This is the owner A who is looking for the house. This was going to be my office building, right? Then I want you to realize that what I'm doing right now is I'm talking to property owner B. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller because the office building was worth about twice as much as the house was. Hang on, I think somebody else is coming into this call. There we go. So here was the house. And I said to the guy, look, you've gone ahead, you've agreed that I can pay you $10,000 down and that you will carry a mortgage for $80,000. And but my CPA says that my CPA wants you to carry that mortgage instead of on your property here. My CPA wants you to carry it back on this property over here. You see, your house is worth about $90,000. This office building over here is worth $275,000, and I have an appraisal to prove it. What would you rather do, owner B? Would you rather carry an $80,000 mortgage on this house here that you haven't been able to sell? Or would you rather carry your $80,000 mortgage over on this property over here, this office building that's worth twice as much money? My seller, A, looked at that and said, gee, I'd rather have a first mortgage over here. And I said, well, why is that? And my seller confirmed with me. I didn't tell my seller. You want to be careful that you don't tell the seller too much, because if they think you're too smart, they won't deal with you. I said, well, why would you want to do that? He said, well, I'd rather have an $80,000 mortgage on a property worth $275,000 than have an $80,000 mortgage on a property I just sold for $90,000. If you didn't pay me, I'd rather repossess this property than own this property. Now that was beautiful, because when my seller B over here decided to carry their mortgage over here instead of over here, that means that this house is now free and clear and had no mortgage on it. Now, you guys, why is it important for property B over here to be free and clear and have no mortgage? Why is that important?
Is it so you can pull money out?
No, not
No.
no. Good.
No.
I'm going to pull money out. I'm going to pull it out over here because that's where my big equity is. And this is the office that I'm going to own.
Right. But the reason for it to be free and clear is so the other seller
There you
who's
go.
selling you the office building has no mortgage on his own,
Exactly right.
which
So
is one of the
by
terms of the purchase.
exactly right. So by my property owner B being willing to carry the mortgage over here, that made this property free and clear. And the guy who's selling property A over here, he was thrilled because now property B is free and clear. And remember, I told him I was either going to give him $125,000 cash, or I was going to give him a property free and clear. Now, how do I do that? I do that with a 1031 tax deferred exchange. I had an offer on property A. I had seller A who went into escrow and signed over a deed to property A, because property A is going to get property B free and clear, right? So A says, I'll be glad to do it. I'm going to put this deed into escrow, and you will not record the deed until I get the deed recorded on property B. And escrow said, fine. So that deed went into escrow. And then then seller B comes into closing, and seller B says, I will put my deed for property B into escrow as long as you take my $80,000 mortgage and record it on property A. And the title company said, we'll do that. So now escrow had the title to property A, the title to property B, and they had the mortgage for property A ready to go. There's one more element needed, because before B would sell this house, he not only wanted, he not only wanted the $80,000 mortgage, he also wanted $10,000 down, right? So now I go out to my lender and I say to my lender, okay, I'm ready to get my loan now. And I want I've got the numbers more specifically, but I'm going to keep the numbers round here. Give me a $47,000 second mortgage on property A. And they said, okay, we'll do it. And I went in and I signed the mortgage paperwork, and they put $47,000 into this escrow. Now, I'm not gonna pull the plug on this yet and finish it off, because I want you guys to understand all of the moving parts. You guys understand that I had the deed to property A in the escrow. You guys understand that, right? I had the deed to property A in escrow because seller A knew they were going to get property B free and clear. I had the deed to property B in escrow. Why did I have that? Because my seller of property B wanted $10,000 cash and wanted an $80,000 first mortgage recorded over on property A. The title company said, yes, we're going to do all that. But I didn't have $10,000 cash. And furthermore, I didn't have the $15,000 to put in to the property, to put in the parking lot, to take out the kitchen, to fix the bathroom, to do so. I had to change some walls around to make it into an office building. A very nice office building, by the way. And I needed that money. I needed $47,000. And so the lender goes, okay, they put the $47,000 in escrow because I signed the mortgage. Okay, so we had $47,000 in escrow. $10,000 went to seller. $10,000 was going to go to seller B. Got it? For the down payment, right? So title gave $10,000 of that $47,000 to seller B, recorded the mortgage on property A, and gave property B to seller A. Everybody have that? The owner of property A got property B. The owner of property B got $10,000 cash and a first mortgage on property A. And everybody was very, very happy, but not quite as happy as I was. No, they were just equally happy with me because all of us got our goals fulfilled. Because I had $47,000. I had to pay out $15,000 for improvements, right? To make that an office building. I had to pay out $10,000 to the seller for the down payment. And what did that leave me? Hang on, I'm having trouble with the keys on my board here. What did that leave me? 47,000 minus 10,000 is 37,000 minus 15 is what?
22.
22K. Now these numbers are a little bit, I rounded them off to keep everything simple because I ended up with around $27,000 in my pocket. But you got it? This is $27,000 that was left over. And because I was the borrower, I got the money. This is my loan proceeds. The bank would have given me $187,000. All I wanted was 47. Of course, if the bank had given me $187,000, they would have wanted to pay off the first mortgage, right? So there it is. There's the transaction. And I think I have a picture of it up here. And I'm going to summarize it up here. Now, you guys, anybody can do this. All you have to do is just have your goal that you're going to go and grow in real estate. You just have to start becoming an expert in properties that are in the fringe area. You have to become an expert in what single family homes are in commercial, duplex, triplex, fourplex, fiveplex, 22plex zones. You have to find out what duplexes and fourplexes are in eightplex zones. You have to find out what duplexes are in office zones. And you start buying based on the fringe rather than buying based on the old traditional, assuming I'm going to flip this house kind of idea. So here's my summary, and then that completes the exercise for today. My summary looks like this. I was the investor over here with no property and no cash. Buyer investor. I had no money. I want an office building. So I went out and looked for an office building, and I was willing to do a conversion. There's probably one other element that's critical here. I knew I had a lender that would loan me some money. Now, you guys, there are all sorts of sources on lending. And one of the biggest sources on lending are not just banks, they're private lenders. Private lenders, people who have IRA accounts, people who have 401ks, people have money and they want to invest in transactions that make sense. By the way, if you were the lender, let's say you had the opportunity to do this. Let's come back to this. Come back to this stick over here. If you were the lender, if I came to you as a private lender and I said, hey, I've got a $270,000 property here. And this $270,000 property, it's going to have a first mortgage on it of $80,000. Here's my appraisal showing it's worth $275,000. That means this property is going to have an equity in this property of how much?
195 right now.
Okay, good. I'll go with 195 because I can't think more than one thing at a time. This, and while you're doing another calculation, what percent of LTV is 80% to the 275? What's the LTV on that loan? I have a calculator here. I can do that real fast. It's $80,000 is the first mortgage balance, and the property is worth $275,000. So that means this loan is a 29% LTV loan. This is 29% LTV. And that leaves an equity here for the other 70% equity in the property. Now, I'm inviting the lender to give me a $45,000 second mortgage because I'm not greedy. And if we take the $45,000 and subtract it from the $195,000, we still have an equity of $150,000 of equity in that property. The total loan balance on the property is going to be 80 plus 45. So 80 plus 45 is 125,000. So what is the combined LTV or the CLTV on this property? 125 divided by 275 is 45% LTV. If you as a private lender, would you be okay with a 47% LTV loan on a property? You know what that means, right? This means that if you just stopped getting the money on your $45,000 second mortgage, you could foreclose, force the sale of this property, and tell me what are the odds that this $275,000 property would sell for a minimum of $125,000 and get your money back?
Pretty much all but guaranteed.
It's almost guaranteed, isn't it? So tell me what risk factor does the lender have in this transaction?
That particular transaction, almost zero.
Almost zero, right? I mean, it's pretty good. So you could have a private lender here or a commercial lender here. Somebody to give you a line of credit or a second mortgage or a HELOC, right? And you could go out and do this transaction today. All you have to do is just have a goal that you want to change the use in a property. So you just have to find a property that's in a zone that will increase the value of that property based on its current use and based on future use. And there may be some cash involved. You might have to do some improvements here. But hey, you know, what are a few improvements? And that's the transaction. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. What I'd like to have somebody do is somebody else explain it in their own words. Because if you can do this, and if you can get this, then I know that you've got it. If one person can get it. And I don't know why I like to pick on Carrie. Jeff, do you want to go for it? Do you want to explain this in your own words? So we can leave Carrie alone, because I picked on him a lot last week.
Well, it looks pretty straightforward. Property A, the property that you first approached to buy,
Right.
was drastically undervalued for the zone that it's in.
Exactly right. You hit the nail on the head for the
And
zone that
property
it was in.
B,
Yeah.
the owner just wanted to leave, and it was still in an area where the seller of property A would be happy living.
Right on. And let me just say that property owner B, I did not have to get a discount on the house. I could have bought this at whatever the retail value was, because look at all the equity that's in there.
Right.
Right. I could have paid $20,000 or $30,000 more for that house. And this one involved a seller carry, but I could have paid cash for that house. Because my lender over here, it doesn't matter whether there's an existing mortgage of $80,000 with a second mortgage of $45,000, or whether it was a total loan of $125,000. The lender is in very little exposure. I did not have to get seller financing on it, and I didn't really have to get a discount on the price. You hit the nail on the head, Jeff. The key here is I find a property where I can change the use. You hit the nail on the head. So continue from there.
So with those two factors already in place, it's simply a matter of filling in the dots between the needs of seller A, the needs of seller B, and your planned use of property A.
Right on. I had to get busy.
Yeah, well, you had to get that appraisal.
Yeah,
That was one of the things that was necessary.
absolutely.
You had to make arrangements with both sellers
Yes.
for the value and what they would accept to satisfy their sale.
Yes.
And then you just make the arrangements to fill the needs.
Exactly. And two other
And
factors.
and the biggest need that was filled was yours for cash in pocket.
Yeah, there you go. I like that summary. That's a good summary. Not only did I get an office building, I got cash in my pocket. I got a new office, I got everything I wanted. It was like Christmas that day. In fact, who here did not get exactly what they wanted? Everybody got exactly what they wanted.
Yep.
Now, this is what's so amazing. The key factors is seller A and seller B, as you point out, Jeff. The lender's a key factor, right? So I'm going to go out there and have to find lenders who are willing to do this. And I'm either going to find commercial lenders or I'm going to find private lenders. And I'm going to tell you guys, private lenders are the way to go. And I had to find an escrow company that knew how to do an escrow. Because some escrow companies will not know what the heck you're talking about. Does that make sense to you? They'll go, what? And so, by the way, this does not need a Starker escrow company. This could be done with a regular escrow company that understands in this case, seller carry loans. But as we pointed out, it didn't even need to be a seller carry. I could have paid full price for property B, all cash. And there's still plenty of room to grow. And so not only did I have 22,000, according to these numbers, I think it was actually 27,000, but I had an equity in the property of 150,000. That equity is my equity. And so I made $150,000 there, and I made $27,000 over here. All in that day. It took me about 60 days to put that together. So my total profit was $172,000 according to these numbers, and it was more like 177,000. I made 177,000 that day. 150 in equity and $22,000 cash in my pocket. And did I pay any taxes? Nope.
Steve, that's more money than I made in the 5 years I've been investing. Good for you.
Well,
And I've
thank
been
you.
a lot more than that 60 days you went there.
Yeah. So it's a matter of having a vision and fulfilling needs, finding out what people need. You know, when you're doing a flip business plan, like they sell these magic wands, you're assuming a market, you're assuming people have a need. In a market like COVID, you have to find the need and isolate the need. And it takes effort. You have to go out and talk to people. You have to knock on doors. And believe me, I felt extremely lucky that I found B. I mean, the fact that this was like 4 blocks away in the very same neighborhood, I couldn't believe it. Of course, I was scanning the neighborhood. I was knocking on doors. Hey, did anybody here want to sell? But this property had been listed. This was like freaking amazing. And why this guy didn't walk across the street or around the corner and down the street and find this property, I don't know. But he just didn't see any potential for it. He was willing to, all he could think about is selling his house. All this guy could think about was selling his house and retiring. This guy could think about selling his house and getting a free and clear property in a nice neighborhood. And having a good escrow company, you guys, is the key to this thing. So I wanted to share that with you. What's that?
I'm betting that seller A probably wasn't even actually thinking about selling his house until you approached him.
I think you're right.
You didn't say that he had it listed.
He did not have it listed.
So when you approached him, that opened the door for him to do something.
Exactly.
That's probably why he wasn't looking for that other house.
Yeah, it probably is. But you know what? Even when I wrote it up for him, he didn't go looking. I don't know. People do what they do, right? So it's a matter of finding out what people need and putting it together. And I can't tell you how important this escrow is right here. Because having a good escrow company who's willing to keep a straight face and not look cross-eyed. You know, when seller A comes in and deeds his property over to get property B, and there's no loan proceeds in there yet. I had to have all the deeds in the thing before I could go get my loan. So this is a classic 1031 tax deferred exchange with a cash out buyer. And who's the cash out buyer? Me. You know, if we go back to this model that we talked about here, here's property owner A exchanging for property owner B. A wanted B, but B didn't want A. B wanted cash. So I stepped in, brought in the cash. I got property A. And by the way, I put cash in my pocket. That's it. That's our transaction. Any other, Jeffrey, thanks for jumping in, man, and doing the thing. Carrie really appreciates you. Any other comments or questions before we go tonight? Going once?
No. Very
Good.
good.
All right. You guys start thinking about your real estate goals, right? Start thinking about what you can do to bring happiness into other people's lives, and bring some happiness into your lives. I talked to an investor today who's just totally discouraged. They got no vision. They have no vision about anything. They're having trouble staying focused. They think this is a terrible time. This is a great time. It's a great time of opportunity. This is the time, this is the place, and you are the people to do it. You're the ones. All right. Any final comments? Okay, let's go make some money. Talk to y'all later, everybody.
All righty. Take care
Bye-bye
now.
now.
Good night.
Bye-bye.